Before time had a name, there was only a silent, motionless sea under an empty sky. Within this primordial stillness, creator gods stirred. They spoke the world into existence. Mountains rose, valleys formed, and jungles teemed with life. But their creation was incomplete. They yearned for beings who could praise them, who could keep the days and honor their makers. Their first attempts were failures. Figures of wet mud dissolved into nothing. Beings carved from wood were rigid, heartless, and soon destroyed. Desperate, the gods convened one last time. They found a sacred substance, the very lifeblood of the Mesoamerican world, maize. From this golden grain, they would fashion a new kind of being, one with flesh, blood, and a soul capable of understanding the cosmos. This is the story of the Popol Vuh, the Mayan book of creation, and how humanity was born from a single, sacred seed. Before the first dawn, before the first sound, there was only stillness. Imagine a universe holding its breath, a vast, silent expanse composed of two elements. Below lay the sea, a placid mirror stretching to an unseen horizon, motionless under a great, empty sky. Above, the sky itself was a hollow vault, waiting to be filled. Nothing moved. There was no sun, no moon, no person, no animal, no tree, no stone. Only the sky above and the calm water below. This was the beginning, a state of pure potential, a canvas awaiting the first stroke of creation. Within this profound quiet, within the shimmering green and blue waters, dwelled the creators. They were not figures of solid form, but of thought and light, concealed in plumes of quetzal feathers. They were Tepeu, the maker, and Gucumatz, the feathered serpent. They existed in the water, in the darkness, as radiant powers of creation, their presence a silent promise of the world to come. For ages, they floated in this timeless void, contemplating. The universe was a thought yet to be spoken. The silence was absolute, a perfect, unbroken peace. But peace without life, without purpose, is a form of emptiness. The potential for a world, for beings who could walk and speak and praise, lay dormant within them. This primordial state could not last forever. The divine energy coiled within the maker and the feathered serpent was building, preparing for a monumental change. A thought began to form, a shared idea that rippled through the cosmic waters. The time for silence was ending. The time for creation was at hand. They would need to bring their thoughts together, to weave a plan from the fabric of the void. The question was not if they would create, but how. What would this new world look like? What creatures would inhabit it? And most importantly, who would be there to honor the creators, to keep the cycle of existence turning? The two great spirits floated, their minds on the cusp of the first act of will. The stillness was about to be shattered, not by a cataclysm, but by a far more powerful force, the spoken word. The first conversation was about to take place, a dialogue that would give birth to mountains, forests, and life itself. The universe was poised, waiting for the first syllable. From the deep stillness, a consciousness stirred. Tepeu and Gucumatz, the maker and the feathered serpent, came together in the primordial darkness. Their meeting was not of bodies, but of minds, a convergence of divine will. Here, in the heart of the silent sea, they began to speak. Their words were the first sounds in the universe, and each syllable held the power to shape reality. They spoke of the dawn, of life, and of a world that would be filled with beings to praise them. Their first command was simple, yet universe-altering. "Let the emptiness be filled," they declared. "Let the water recede and the earth appear." As they spoke it, so it was. The waters parted, and from the depths, the solid land emerged. The creation continued, a symphony of divine speech. "Earth," they said, and the earth was formed. They imagined mountains, and their thoughts caused the great peaks to rise, their jagged spires breaking through the clouds. They spoke of valleys, and the land gently folded to create them. They planned the courses of rivers, and water began to flow, carving paths through the new landscape. With the world taking shape, they populated it. They spoke trees and bushes, and forests sprang up, covering the mountains and plains in a blanket of green. The world was beautiful, a masterpiece of divine artistry, but it was still silent. The creators looked upon their work and saw that it was incomplete. It needed life, movement, and sound. So they continued their work, creating the guardians of the woods and mountains. They formed the deer, the birds, the jaguars, and the serpents. To each, they gave a home and a purpose. The birds were to fill the sky, the deer to roam the plains. The jaguars were to be the embodiment of power in the forest. But when the gods commanded these new creatures to speak their names and praise their makers, a profound disappointment followed. The animals could not obey. The birds only chirped and screeched. The jaguars only roared. Their voices were a cacophony, not a chorus of worship. They could not form the words of praise, could not comprehend the source of their existence. Tepeu and Gucumatz realized their creation was flawed. These beings were not the keepers of days they had envisioned. A new plan was needed. They resolved to make a new kind of being, one with intelligence and a voice capable of true praise. The age of animals was complete, but the quest for the true worshipper had only just begun. Having fashioned a world of breathtaking beauty and filled it with creatures, the gods Tepeu and Gucumatz faced their first great challenge, creating a being in their image, a being who could speak, remember, and offer praise. Their first attempt would be a lesson in the fragility of form and the difficulty of breathing life into inanimate matter. Their material of choice was the very foundation of their new world, the earth itself. They gathered wet soil, rich and dark, and began to mold it. With divine hands, they shaped the first figure. It had a head, arms, and legs. It resembled a person. But as they worked, problems immediately became apparent. The mud was soft and yielding. The figure's features were indistinct, its face lopsided and expressionless. It could not hold its shape properly. When they set it upon its feet, it slumped and struggled to stand. The gods tried to give it a voice, but when it spoke, the sounds were garbled and nonsensical. It had no mind, no coherence in its thoughts or words. The mud being could not comprehend its purpose. It looked around with a vacant stare, unable to recognize its creators or the magnificent world they had built. It could not walk properly, its movements clumsy and uncoordinated. It was a hollow shell, a mere effigy of life. The greatest flaw, however, was its very substance. When the rains came, the water that gave life to the forests and rivers became its undoing. The mud figure began to soften, to lose its form, and slowly dissolved back into the formless earth from which it came. The gods watched as their first creation crumbled away. It was a failure. This being was too weak, too impermanent to fulfill the grand destiny they had planned. It could not endure. It could not think. It could not praise. Frustration mingled with resolve. The creators knew this was not the answer. They had to start again, to find a stronger, more resilient material. The mud had failed them. Their next attempt would have to be crafted from something far more durable, something that could withstand the elements, and perhaps, just perhaps, house a spirit worthy of its makers. The dream of a true human was still distant, and the path of creation was proving to be one of trial and error. Learning from the failure of the mud people, the divine creators, Tepeu and Gucumatz, sought a new, more enduring substance for their next attempt. They turned to the forests they had so beautifully crafted and chose wood as their medium. From the sturdy trunks of the tsait tree, they carved the males, and from the reeds of the zebak tree, they fashioned the females. This second generation of beings was a marked improvement. They were strong and solid, unlike their predecessors of mud. They could stand tall, walk the earth, and their forms did not dissolve in the rain. They were the first true inhabitants of the world, and they multiplied. Soon, the wooden people populated the forests and valleys, building homes and forming a primitive society. They looked like people, they walked like people, and they talked like people. From a distance, the gods' experiment seemed a success, but a closer look revealed a critical, deep-seated flaw. Though they had bodies and voices, they were empty inside. They had no heart, no mind, no soul. Their memories were fleeting, and they felt no connection to the divine source of their existence. They spoke, but their words were hollow and meaningless, devoid of thought or emotion. They performed their daily tasks mechanically, without purpose or understanding. Crucially, they forgot their makers. They never looked to the sky. They never gave thanks for the world they inhabited or the life they had been given. They did not praise Tepeu and Gucumatz. They were little more than animated mannequins, puppets carved from wood, wandering aimlessly across the face of the earth. The gods watched from above, their disappointment growing with each passing day. These beings were an affront to the very idea of creation. They were a beautiful but empty vessel. They could not fulfill the fundamental purpose for which they were made, to be keepers of the days, to honor the gods, and to sustain the cosmic order through worship. A profound sense of dissatisfaction settled upon the creators. These wooden people were not the beings they had envisioned. They were a dead end, another failed experiment. A decision was made, a grim and final judgment upon their flawed creation. This race of empty people could not be allowed to continue. The world would have to be cleansed once more to make way for a third, and hopefully final, attempt. The judgment of the gods upon the wooden people was absolute. Their soulless existence was an imbalance in the new world, and the creators resolved to correct their mistake with a cataclysm of immense power. The age of imperfection had to end. The sky darkened as the gods unleashed their fury. A great flood was summoned, with waters rising to swallow the homes of the wooden people. But this was no ordinary rain. It was a thick, sticky resin that fell from the sky, a suffocating deluge designed to erase this failed generation. Panic seized the wooden figures. For the first time, they felt a primal instinct for survival, but their empty minds offered no solution. They scrambled for high ground, climbing into their houses, but the houses collapsed upon them. They climbed the trees, but the trees shook them off. They sought refuge in caves, but the caves sealed themselves shut. The world itself turned against them. In a stunning reversal, the tools and objects they had taken for granted rose up in rebellion. Their grinding stones, their pots, their plates, and even their dogs, all animated with a vengeful spirit. "You mistreated us," the animals and objects cried out. "You used us without thought, and now it is our turn to cause you discomfort." The dogs, once their companions, turned on them, resentful of their neglect. The grinding stones, used to prepare food, rose up to strike them. It was a complete and total reckoning. The world was being purged of these hollow beings. The few who managed to survive this onslaught were changed forever. Scrambling into the high branches of the forest to escape the chaos below, their forms were twisted and altered. They became the monkeys that now inhabit the jungle canopies. According to the Mayan storytellers, these creatures serve as a permanent reminder of the second failed attempt to create humanity. Their chattering and their restless movements through the trees are an echo of that ancient, flawed race. The world was once again quiet. The floodwaters receded, and the resinous rain ceased. The earth was clean, but it was also empty of the worshippers the gods so desperately desired. 2 attempts had ended in failure, first with mud, then with wood. The creators had learned valuable lessons about substance and spirit. They now understood that the body must be strong, but the heart and mind must be capable of memory, understanding, and praise. Their final attempt would require a new material, something sacred, something that contained the very essence of life itself. The search for the perfect ingredient was about to begin. The second attempt at creation had populated the world, but it was a hollow success. The gods Tepeu and Gucumatz looked upon their creations, the people carved from wood, and felt a profound emptiness. These beings were physically present. They walked, they talked, and they multiplied, building homes and filling the earth with their wooden forms. Yet, they were incomplete. They possessed no memory of their creators, no gratitude in their hearts, and no understanding of the divine purpose that had brought them into being. Their mouths spoke empty words, their faces were inflexible masks, and when they looked to the heavens, it was with a vacant, uncomprehending stare. They were echoes of life, not its substance. Their existence was an affront to the sacred order. The heart of sky, the divine core of the cosmos, grew heavy with disappointment. A decision was reached. This flawed creation could not be allowed to persist. A great cleansing was necessary to wipe the slate clean for a new beginning. The gods resolved to unmake what they had made. The destruction was not swift. It was a comprehensive and terrifying unraveling of their world. A great resin fell from the sky, a thick, dark rain that was followed by a cataclysmic flood. The waters rose, turning the entire surface of the world into a churning, chaotic sea. But the water was not their only adversary. In a stunning reversal of order, the world itself turned against the wooden people. The creatures they had taken for granted, the birds of the air, the jaguars of the forest, rose up to challenge them. Even their own possessions, the inanimate objects of their daily lives, became animated by a spirit of vengeance. Their grinding stones, their cooking pots, their homes, and their tools all spoke, accusing their masters of misuse and disrespect. There was nowhere to hide. The wooden people scrambled for safety, climbing to the tops of their houses, but the houses collapsed beneath them. They sought refuge in the highest trees, but the trees shook them off. They tried to enter caves, but the caves sealed themselves shut. This was not merely a natural disaster, it was a cosmic judgment. The world was purged of their empty presence, leaving behind only a few descendants who, according to the myth, became the monkeys that now inhabit the trees, a constant, chattering reminder of a creation that failed to understand its soul. The world was once again dark, silent, and waiting. Into the void left by the great flood, a new and powerful figure emerged. In the dim twilight of the recovering world, a being of spectacular magnificence declared himself the new master of the sky. He was Gucumatz, known as Seven Macaw, and his arrogance was as brilliant as his plumage. He was not a true god, but a powerful primordial entity who saw the world's emptiness as an opportunity for self-glorification. His appearance was dazzling, a spectacle of light and color designed to awe and overwhelm. His eyes shimmered like pure silver, his teeth were carved from jade and inlaid with turquoise, and his grand beak shone with precious metals. When he flew, his enormous wings, adorned with resplendent metallic feathers, cast a brilliant, blinding light across the land. Believing his own grandeur was proof of his divinity, Seven Macaw perched atop the highest tree on earth and proclaimed his supremacy. "I am your son," he boomed, his voice echoing across the desolate landscape. "I am your moon. I am the light by which you will live. My splendor is the greatest in all existence." He was a false dawn, a beautiful but hollow substitute for the true cosmic order. He represented vanity, the belief that outward appearance and material wealth were the true measures of power. The surviving creatures of the world, still reeling from the flood, looked up at this magnificent being and were mesmerized by his light. But the creators, the true gods, knew that his reign was a perversion. His light was not the life-giving warmth of a true sun. It was the cold, sterile gleam of pride. The world could not be properly reformed under the influence of such a charlatan. Seven Macaw and his equally prideful sons, Zipacna, the maker of mountains, and Cabrakan, the earthquake, represented a fundamental imbalance. They were forces of ego in a universe that required harmony and humility. Before a true and worthy humanity could be created, this false sun had to be brought down from his perch. The world needed heroes, beings with the cleverness and courage to challenge a power that seemed absolute. The stage was set for a confrontation, not of armies, but of wits and will, a battle to restore truth to the heavens. While the arrogant Seven Macaw cast his false light upon the world, a new force was quietly growing in the forests below. They were Hunahpu and Xbalanque, the hero twins, born of a miraculous conception to the maiden Xquick and the spirit of the sacrificed ball-player, Hunahpu. Their destiny was woven into the fabric of the cosmos itself, a divine mandate to restore balance and prepare the world for the arrival of true humanity. The twins were a study in contrasts, a perfect fusion of complementary skills. Hunahpu was the thoughtful strategist, the master of the hunt, and an unerring shot with his blowgun. Xbalanque was the bolder of the two, often taking the lead in action, his energy a perfect match for his brother's cunning. Together, they were a formidable pair, their bond forged not just by blood, but by a shared sacred purpose that they felt deep within their souls. They lived a humble life with their grandmother, honing their skills in the wilderness. They were exceptional hunters, moving through the jungle with a grace that was more than human. They understood the language of the birds and the secrets of the forest. They were not merely boys playing at being men. They were divine agents in training, their every action a preparation for the great tasks that lay ahead. Their powers were subtle, rooted in cleverness, trickery, and a profound connection to the natural world. They represented the opposite of Seven Macaw's empty spectacle. Where he was boastful, they were discreet. Where he was opulent, they were resourceful. Where his power was in his brilliant appearance, theirs was in their sharp minds and unwavering resolve. As they grew, they heard the stories of the great bird who claimed to be the sun and the moon. They saw his false light and understood the cosmic imbalance it represented. This was not just an affront to the gods, it was an obstacle to the completion of creation. The heart of sky communicated with them, not through booming pronouncements, but through the whispers of the wind and the rustling of leaves. The twins understood their first great mission. They would be the ones to humble the magnificent Seven Macaw and extinguish his vain light, paving the way for the true dawn. The hero twins knew that a direct assault on Seven Macaw would be futile. His power was too great, his perch too high. To defeat him, they would need a plan built on cunning, not on brute force. They observed their quarry, learning his habits and his weaknesses. They discovered that the source of his pride was also the source of his vulnerability, his magnificent jeweled teeth and shining metal eyes. Their strategy unfolded in two masterful stages. First, armed with his blowgun, Hunahpu hid himself near the tree where Seven Macaw feasted. As the great bird descended, Hunahpu took aim and fired a single clay pellet. The shot was perfect. It struck Seven Macaw in the jaw, shattering his brilliant teeth and sending him crashing to the ground. Wounded and in great discomfort, the magnificent being retreated to his home, his radiance dimmed by the injury. The first blow had been struck, but the task was not complete. Now, for the second part of their plan, the twins employed deception. They enlisted the help of an elderly couple, a great seer and his wife, to pose as itinerant healers. The twins disguised themselves as the couple's grandchildren, accompanying them to the home of the wounded seven macaw. The old man offered to cure the great bird's ailment. "Your trouble," the old healer explained, "is the worm that gnaws at your teeth. We must remove them to ease your discomfort." Blinded by his own suffering, Seven Macaw agreed. The true source of his splendor was about to be dismantled. Carefully, the old man worked, replacing the brilliant, jewel-encrusted teeth with smooth white kernels of corn. Then, he attended to the bird's shining eyes, skillfully removing the metal plates that gave them their gleam. As his last jewel was removed, Seven Macaw's power vanished. His light extinguished, his magnificence gone, he was reduced to an ordinary creature. His spirit faded with his vanity, and the false sun was no more. The twins had restored balance to the heavens, but their victory was a monumental event. It sent ripples throughout the cosmos, a declaration of their power that was heard not only in the heavens above, but also in the shadowy realms deep below the surface of the earth. The defeat of Seven Macaw and his sons was a triumph that resonated through all planes of existence. The world was now free from the tyranny of arrogance, and the path was clearer for the final creation of humankind. But the hero twins' display of power and cleverness had attracted unwanted attention. Deep beneath the earth, in the shadowy realm of Xibalba, the lords of the underworld took notice. The rulers of this place, whose names inspired fear, were beings of affliction and decay. They governed a domain of trials and traps, a place where their father and uncle, the first set of hero twins, had been defeated and lost their lives long ago. The lords of Xibalba, primarily One Death and Seven Death, heard of the new twins' prowess on the surface world and were filled with a mixture of anger and apprehension. These boys were the sons of Hunhunapu, the very ball player they had once tricked and overcome. The lords saw the twins' growing power as a direct threat to their own dominion. They could not allow such heroes to exist unchallenged, lest they seek retribution for their father's fate. A plan was devised, cloaked in the guise of a formal invitation. The lords of Xibalba decided to summon Hunahpu and Xbalanque to their realm, not for a celebration, but for a contest. They would challenge the twins to a game of Pocketalk, the sacred Mesoamerican ball game. This was the same challenge that had lured their father to his doom. It was a game from which the lords of Xibalba had never lost, for the court and the rules were their own, designed to ensure the demise of any challenger. The summons was delivered by their ominous messengers, 4 magnificent owls who flew from the depths of the underworld to the forest home of the twins. They presented the challenge from the great lords, an invitation that was, in truth, a command. The twins listened, their faces betraying no fear. They knew the stories. They understood that this was not merely a game, but a trial for their very lives. They were being called to walk the same path that had led their father to his end. But Hunahpu and Xbalanque were not their father. Armed with courage, wit, and a divine destiny, they accepted the summons. Their greatest adventure was about to begin, a descent into the heart of the underworld to confront the masters of Xibalba on their own terms. In the world above, where the sun cast long shadows through the ceiba trees, lived 2 brothers, Hunhunapu and Vucubhunapu. They were not gods, but something close to it, beings of immense talent and vitality. Their greatest passion was the sacred ball game, a sport of cosmic significance. With yokes of leather and rubber balls, they played with such skill and exuberance that the very earth seemed to tremble with their joy. But their games were not without consequence. The pounding of the ball and their triumphant shouts echoed deep into the earth, penetrating the shadowy realm of Xibalba, the underworld. The noise disturbed the formidable lords of Xibalba, malevolent beings who ruled the place of fright. The primary lords, Hun came and Vukub came, were incensed by the disruption. They saw the brothers' vitality as an affront to their own dominion over the end of life, and they conspired to silence them forever. They dispatched their owl messengers with a challenge, an invitation to a game in their own court. The brothers, bound by honor, accepted. Their journey downward was a passage through a series of grim landscapes. They navigated a river of scorpions, a river of pus, and a river of churning water, all designed to weaken and dishearten travelers. When they finally arrived in the great council chamber of Xibalba, the lords had prepared their first deception. Seated in places of honor were intricately carved wooden figures. The brothers, respectful but naive, greeted these mannequins as the lords, causing the true rulers of the underworld to erupt in derisive laughter. Their humiliation was only the beginning. That night, they were sent to the House of Gloom, a chamber of absolute blackness. They were given a single torch and 2 cigars, with the command that they must be returned in the morning, unconsumed. The brothers saw no way to produce light without using up their tools. They lit the torch and cigars, spending the night in a dim, flickering glow. When morning came, they had failed the test. The items were spent. The lords of Xibalba, having already mocked their gullibility, now condemned their failure. A final, decisive sentence was passed. The brothers had been outwitted, their light extinguished by the masters of shadow. As a final mark of their victory, the lords took the head of Hunhunapu and commanded it be placed in a barren tree, standing alone in the desolate landscape, a stark warning to any who might dare to disturb the quiet of the underworld. The decree of the underworld lords was carried out. The head of Hunhunapu was set among the thorny branches of a barren tree. In the lifeless domain of Xibalba, this act was meant to be the final punctuation on a story of defeat. But the vital energy that had animated the hero twin was not so easily extinguished. A great wonder occurred. The tree, which had never borne fruit, began to sprout. Within days, it was covered in round, pale gourds. The calabashes grew until they were indistinguishable from the head of Hunhunapu nestled among them. The tree became a source of awe and fear. The lords of Xibalba, perplexed by this unforeseen magic, declared the tree forbidden. None were to approach it, and none were to eat its mysterious fruit. News of the miraculous tree spread throughout the underworld. It reached the ears of a young maiden named Exquich, the daughter of one of the lords, Gucumatz. She was filled not with fear, but with an insatiable curiosity. She could not understand why such a wondrous thing should be forbidden. One day, defying her father's command, she walked to the edge of the ball court where the tree stood. As she gazed up at the strange fruit, a voice spoke to her from the branches. It was the spirit of Hunhunapu speaking through his skeletal head. "What is it you want?" the voice asked. "These round things in the branches are nothing but skulls." Lady Exquick, unafraid, answered that she wished to see them. The skull then posed a question. "Do you truly desire one?" When she said yes, the skull instructed her to hold out her right hand. As she extended her palm, the skull projected a drop of saliva into it. The essence passed into her, a transfer of life and lineage. "In my saliva, I have given you my descendants," the voice explained. "Now my head has nothing on it anymore. It is just a skull. So it is with the sons of great men." Lady Exquick returned to her father's house, her secret held within. The seed of heroes had been planted, a direct challenge to the authority of Xibalba, conceived not of flesh, but of magic and defiance. The underworld, which had sought to end a lineage, had instead become the site of its miraculous continuation. Months passed, and the miracle within Lady Exquick became apparent. Her father, the Lord Gucumatz, observed her changing form and was filled with fury. Believing she had brought profound dishonor to his house, he questioned her relentlessly. Lady Exquick maintained her innocence, insisting no man had known her, but her father refused to listen to her tale of the calabash tree. His judgment was swift and severe. He summoned his royal messengers, 4 formidable owls, and commanded them to take his daughter far away and perform a sacrificial rite. As proof of the deed, they were to bring back her heart in a bowl. The owls, bound to obey, led the young maiden away. As they traveled, Lady Exquick pleaded with them, not for pity, but for justice. She recounted the true story of her conception, of the voice from the tree and the magical saliva. She argued that what she carried was not a mark of shame, but a sacred trust, the children of Hunhunapu. She insisted that what they were commanded to do was a great injustice. Her words, filled with truth and conviction, moved the owl messengers. They recognized the profound wrongness of their orders. Conspiring with her, they devised a plan. They would not harm the maiden. Instead, they found a croton tree, known for its vibrant, blood-red sap. They tapped the tree, and the sap flowed into the bowl, where it coagulated, forming a perfect replica of a heart. The owls then returned to Xibalba and presented the bowl to Gucumatz. The lords gathered around the ceremonial fire, convinced of their triumph. They watched as the sap was placed upon the flames, the fragrant smoke rising as a testament to their restored honor. They were completely deceived. Far away, guided by her new allies, Lady Exquick was led up from the underworld and into the world of light. The owls brought her to the house of Exmucain, the ancient grandmother of the cosmos and the mother of the first twins. But the old woman, still grieving her sons, was bitter and unwelcoming. She refused to believe Lady Exquick's story, viewing her as another trick from the underworld. The maiden's trials were not over. She now had to prove to the mother of her children's father that she was worthy of carrying the future. In the house of their grandmother, Exmucain, the new hero twins were born. They were named Hunapu and Expalanque. From their first moments, it was clear they were extraordinary. They possessed a wisdom beyond their years and a penchant for clever tricks. They grew up in the shadow of their father's story, a tale of tragedy that fueled their destiny. As young men, they displayed a natural talent for the ball game, an inherited skill that ran deep in their spirit. One day, using their cunning, they located the gaming equipment of their father and uncle, the leather yokes, arm guards, and rubber ball, which Exmucain had hidden away, fearing a repeat of history. The twins cleared the old ball court and began to play. The sound was unmistakable. The rhythmic bounce of the ball, the swift movements, the triumphant calls. It was the same vibrant energy that had once before disturbed the lords of the underworld. Deep below, in the council halls of Xibalba, Hun came and Vukub came, heard the noise, and seethed with rage. "Who are these who dare to play above our heads again?" they demanded. Once more, they sent their messengers to the surface with a summons. But this time, the recipients were not naive. Hunapu and Expalanque had been told everything by their grandmother. They knew of the deceptions, the impossible trials, and the ultimate fate that had befallen their father. They accepted the invitation not with apprehension, but with a quiet, determined resolve. This would not be a mere game. It would be a campaign of retribution. Before they left, they planted 2 ears of green corn in the center of their grandmother's house, telling her, "This is our sign. If they dry up, we have perished, but if they sprout anew, we live." Their descent into Xibalba was a master class in preparation. They navigated the treacherous rivers with ease. When they reached the crossroads, they knew which path to take. To counter the Lord's first trick, they sent a scout ahead, a mosquito. The insect bit each of the seated figures. The wooden mannequins remained silent, but the real lords cried out in pain, revealing their identities. The twins strode confidently into the chamber, ignored the decoys, and greeted the true lords by name. "Hail, Hun came! Hail, Vukub came!" The rulers of Xibalba were stunned into silence. Their first and most effective trick had been effortlessly dismantled. The game had begun, but the players had changed. Having passed the initial deceptions, Hunahpu and Xbalanque were subjected to the deadly trials of the houses of Xibalba. First was the House of Gloom, the same test that had doomed their father. They were given a torch and cigars and told to return them intact at dawn. The twins, however, were masters of illusion. Xbalanque took the torch and affixed the brilliant red tail feather of a macaw to its tip, which glowed like a flame in the dark. Hunahpu placed a firefly on the end of his cigar, its greenish light mimicking a burning ember. The guards of the house were fooled, and the twins passed the test with ease. Next came the House of Knives, filled with chattering, self-wielding blades of obsidian. The twins did not fight them. Instead, they spoke to the knives, promising them the flesh of all animals in the future if they would only remain still. The knives agreed, and the twins spent the night unharmed. They survived the House of Cold by huddling together, the House of Jaguars by feeding the great cat's bones, and the House of Fire by mastering the flames. In every trial, they replaced brute force with cunning, and fear with negotiation. The lords of Xibalba grew increasingly frustrated. Their instruments of doom were being systematically neutralized. They decided to send the twins to their most fearsome creation, the House of Bats. The chamber was filled with camazots, monstrous bats with snouts like blades. To protect themselves, the twins crawled inside their blowguns and sealed the ends. They lay perfectly still as the creatures shrieked and swooped through the darkness all night. As the hours passed, the noise began to subside. Believing dawn was near, Hunahpu grew curious. He cautiously peeked his head out from the end of his blowgun to check for light. In that fleeting moment of vulnerability, a massive bat swept down from the ceiling. With a single, silent pass, it snatched Hunahpu's head from his shoulders. Xbalanque was left alone in the darkness, his brother's body beside him. The disembodied head was taken by the triumphant lords, who planned to use it as the ball in the final, decisive game the next day. Victory for Xibalba seemed absolute. One hero was gone, the other was alone, and the ultimate humiliation was set for sunrise. In the shadowy depths of Xibalba, the Mayan underworld, a sound echoed that was alien to this realm of decay: the sharp, rhythmic impact of a rubber ball against stone. The hero twins, Hunahpu and Xbalanque, had answered the summons of the underworld lords. They now stood on the Court of Dread, a place where many had played their last game. This was no mere sport. It was a ritual, a cosmic contest where the stakes were life itself. Their opponents were the formidable gods of the underworld, beings of immense power and cunning, who had never known defeat on their home ground. The air was thick with tension, the silence of the watching spirits broken only by the game's progress. The lords of Xibalba were masters of deception. They presented the twins with a ball that was, in truth, a sharpened skull, designed to injure and intimidate. But Hunahpu and Xbalanque were not easily fooled. Gifted with supernatural insight and athletic grace, they moved with a synergy that baffled their powerful adversaries. Hunahpu's strength was matched by Xbalanque's speed and cunning. They communicated without words, anticipating each other's moves, turning the lord's own strategies against them. The ball flew across the court, a blur of motion between the high stone walls. The twins used their hips, chests, and thighs with precision, deflecting every treacherous play. They were not just playing a game. They were enacting a dance of defiance against the forces of the abyss. For the lords of Xibalba, the game was a tool of dominion, a way to assert their authority over all who entered their realm. For the twins, it was a battle for the soul of the world above, a fight to restore balance and honor their fallen father. Every point scored was a small victory for light against shadow. As the game reached its climax, the twins executed a series of brilliant plays, leaving the lords of the underworld stunned and outmaneuvered. They had achieved the impossible. They had won the great game in the heart of Xibalba. But as the final point was scored, the triumphant echoes faded, replaced by a chilling silence. The faces of the underworld gods were not those of sportsmen accepting defeat. They were masks of cold fury. Having won the game, the twins had not won their freedom. They had only earned the focused wrath of the underworld's most powerful beings, who now prepared a final, inescapable test. Victory in the ballgame had only sealed the twins' fate in the eyes of the Xibalban lords. Trapped and facing an impossible situation, Hunahpu and Xbalanque devised their most audacious plan yet, one that required them to embrace their own end. They knew what was coming. The lords, frustrated and enraged, prepared a great bonfire, the final, ultimate trial. But the twins held a secret knowledge. They understood that their journey was part of a much larger cycle, and this end was merely a transformation. Before facing the flames, they gave instructions to two prophets, telling them precisely how to treat their remains. With a calm resolve that unnerved their captors, the twins walked towards the inferno. They submitted to the final trial, their bodies turning to ash in a calculated step within an elaborate cosmic plan. Following the twins' own instructions, the lords ground their bones into a fine powder and cast them into a river. For 5 days, the underworld celebrated its apparent victory. But then, a miracle unfolded in the water. The bone dust settled, and from it emerged two figures, first as fishmen, and then, stepping onto the riverbank, as the twins reborn. They disguised themselves as wandering performers, their faces hidden behind masks. They traveled through Xibalba, performing incredible feats of magic. Their fame grew until they were summoned to the palace of the very lords who had orchestrated their demise. Before the court, they performed their masterpiece, a dance of resurrection. Xbalanque would seemingly end his brother's life, only to bring him back, whole and vibrant, with a simple chant. The spectacle was mesmerizing. The lords of Xibalba, enthralled by the display and greedy for the secret to eternal life, demanded to experience the magic themselves. One by one, they eagerly volunteered. In a final brilliant act of illusion and justice, the twins performed their greatest trick. But for the lords, the magic was final. There would be no revival. As the last lord fell, a profound silence descended upon Xibalba. The underworld was conquered, but the twins' own destiny was not yet fulfilled. A far grander transformation awaited them. With the underworld subdued and its tyrannical rulers vanquished, the cosmic stage was set for its new sovereigns. The heroic journey of Hunahpu and Xbalanque was not over. It was merely entering its most glorious and final phase. Having brought justice to the depths, their ultimate purpose lay in the heavens. Their first act of triumph was to honor their lineage. They resurrected their father, Hunahpu, the first maize god, whose downfall had begun their epic quest. He was reborn not to walk the earth, but to preside over the sacred mountain where maize would grow, a symbol of eternal renewal. With their filial duty complete, the twins began their own ascent. They journeyed from the darkness of Xibalba, climbing through the layers of the cosmos, moving towards the sky world. This was their apotheosis, the culmination of their trials and the fulfillment of their destiny. As they rose, they began to transform. Hunahpu, the elder twin, became a being of immense light and heat. He ascended to the center of the sky to become the sun, chasing away the primeval gloom that had shrouded the world. His daily journey would bring warmth, life, and the measure of time. Xbalanque, his clever and steadfast brother, followed him. His light was softer, a silver radiance against the backdrop of the night. He became the moon, the guardian of the nocturnal world, the master of tides and cycles. Together, they established the fundamental rhythm of the universe, the eternal dance of day and night. Their ascension was the final victory of order over chaos. The unpredictable darkness of the underworld was now balanced by the reliable light of the heavens. The world was no longer a place of perpetual twilight, but a realm of predictable patterns, a safe stage for the life that was to come. As the new sun warmed the earth and the moon graced the night sky, the cosmos was finally in balance. The heavens were complete. Now, the divine creators could turn their attention back to the silent, empty world below, ready to sculpt the beings who would finally honor this new creation. The previous attempts at creation had been failures of material. The men of mud had dissolved in the rain, formless and mute. The men of wood were rigid and heartless, their voices empty echoes, incapable of honoring their makers. Now, with the universe in order under the watch of the new sun and moon, the gods gathered once more to try again. This time, they would use a substance that was sacred, the very source of life nurtured by the world itself. Maize. The heart of sky and the sovereign plumed serpent convened a great council. From the place of abundance, 4 animals, the wildcat, the coyote, the parrot, and the crow, brought news of a wondrous substance, yellow and white ears of corn. This, the gods decided, would be the flesh and blood of the new humanity. The divine grandmother, Xmucain, the same being who had aided the hero twins, was tasked with the sacred work. She took the golden and white kernels and ground them into a fine flour. The gods mixed this meal with water, forming a dough from which they would fashion the first people. From the yellow maize, they shaped the flesh. From the white maize, they formed the bones and muscles. Carefully, they sculpted 4 men: Jaguar Quiche, Jaguar Knight, Mahukuta, and True Jaguar. As soon as they were formed, they could stand, walk, and speak. But this time, it was different. Their first words were not empty sounds, but a hymn of gratitude. They gave thanks to the creators for their existence. And then, the gods witnessed the true marvel of their work. The new humans could see. Their vision was not limited to the world around them. It was perfect, boundless. They could see through mountains, into the future, and across the entire expanse of the earth. They understood the great and the small, the far and the near. They comprehended the whole of the divine plan. The gods looked upon their work and felt not just pride, but a tremor of unease. "They will be as we are," they whispered among themselves. A creation so perfect, so knowledgeable, could one day challenge its creators. A new, delicate adjustment was needed to ensure the cosmic hierarchy remained intact. Perfection had to be tempered. To be human was not to be a god, and the boundary between the mortal and the divine needed to be drawn. The creators, seeing the godlike perception of their new children, knew they had to make a final, gentle alteration. They gathered together and discussed the unforeseen power of the maize men. In a tender, almost regretful act, the heart of sky passed a mist before the eyes of the 4 men. Their boundless vision clouded over, as if they were looking through a fogged mirror. Their sight was no longer absolute. They could still see the world, but only that which was close and clear. Their profound understanding of the universe was replaced with a more human perspective, focused on the immediate and the tangible. This act did not diminish them. It defined them. It gave them their mortal place in the grand cosmic order. Now truly human, the 4 men were lonely. So the gods created 4 women to be their companions. These were the first mothers, and from these 8 individuals, the great tribes and nations of the Maya people would descend. They multiplied, spreading across the land, building cities, and studying the movements of the sun and moon, their heroic ancestors. This creation story became the bedrock of Mayan civilization. They called themselves the people of corn, not as a metaphor, but as a literal truth. Maize was not merely their primary food source, it was the sacred substance of their very being. This belief forged an unbreakable bond between the people and the land. Agriculture became a sacred act, a way of nurturing the divine essence within themselves. Planting, tending, and harvesting corn was a ritual that reenacted the creation story, a way of honoring the gods who had fashioned them from the golden grain. And so, the age of the true people began. Their sight was limited, but their purpose was clear: to be the keepers of the earth, the nurturers of the sacred corn, and the voices of praise for their creators. This was the legacy of the corn people, a story not just of origin, but of a continuing relationship with the gods, renewed with every planting season and every harvest, a cycle of life written in kernels of maize.